Well, hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to our Aquarius full moon season meditation. We are really thrilled to have two very Aquarian guests with us for this time, and we really look forward, particularly during an Aquarius full moon, for you to have space and time and energy for communication and connection. So welcome. If you have your candle with you, this is our opening ritual that we light a candle to represent the light we want to see in the world, to bring us all together. And we just take, if we can, Alexander, have a moment where we can just see everyone in gallery, and if you would be able to come straight on video for at least a little bit, with respect for our guests and each other, and just to take a look through the pages. Maybe Claire, you can stop the share so we can. There we go. And if you can, please come on video, even just for a moment, and look at each other in this group. It's good to see you, new people. Just take a moment and notice everyone in our group. Those who are new, those who are with us every month. So good to have you with us. And we invite you to stay on video through this presentation. There will be some PowerPoint and so on. And then if you'd like to go off onto, take your video off after, for the meditation and so on, that'd be great. We are going to aim to have some breakout rooms today because we think the topic is quite interesting and magnetic. And so I'm so pleased to have Mintze van der Velde here from Geneva, and Martin Dieser, who is coming to us from Buenos Aires. And our topic today is the sharing of resources. And as usual, they'll each give their own little perspective. We will have a couple of moments silent to absorb information. And here we go. So welcome, Martin. Welcome, Mintze. And where do we go on sharing resources?
Okay, you want me to start off?
Please.
First, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with all of you. I'm here in Geneva, in Switzerland. Switzerland is as you know, maybe a Western democracy, organized as a federal republic, and it is composed of 26 cantons, which is little states in itself, with federal authorities based in Bern, that's the capital. The Federal Council is a collegial body of 7 members, and the president of that confederation, who is also the head of state, is elected by the assembly from among these 7 members, traditionally in rotation and for a 1-year term. So Switzerland doesn't have a president for 5 or 10 years. It's each year we have another one. There's also a system of direct democracy where people can call a referendum on any topic they want. Geneva is, as you may know, also one of the 5 planetary centers, and its motto is "I seek to fuse, to blend and serve." You can really feel that when you live here in the city, which is also host of one of the offices of the United Nations, more in particular the Human Rights Council. And it also hosts the Red Cross and the High Commissioner for Human Rights. In this presentation, I want to start with a quite challenging, quite a bit long quote from the Tibetan, but I think it is just saying all I would have to say in this presentation. It's written in 1957, and it comes from the book The Externalization of the Hierarchy. He goes on to say, it lies in the hands of the United Nations to protect this released energy from misuse and to see that its power is not prostituted to selfish ends and purely material purposes. It is a saving force and has in it the potency of rebuilding, of rehabilitation, and of reconstruction. Its right use can abolish destitution, bring civilized comfort, and not useless luxury, to all upon our planet. Its expression in forms of right living, if motivated by right human relations, will produce beauty, warmth, color, the abolition of the present forms of disease, the withdrawal of mankind from all activities which involve living or working underground, and will bring to an end all human slavery, all need to work or fight for possessions and things, and will render possible a state of life which will leave men free to pursue the higher aims of the spirit. The prostitution of life to the task of providing the bare necessities or to making it possible for a few rich and privileged people to have too much when others have too little, will come to an end. Men and women everywhere can now be released into a state of life which will give them leisure and time to follow spiritual objectives, to realize richer cultural life, and to attain a broader mental perspective. But my brothers, this is still the Tibetan speaking, men will fight to prevent this. The reactionary groups in every country will neither recognize the need for nor desire this new world order, which the liberation of cosmic energy, even on this initial tiny scale, can make possible. The vested interest, the big cartels, trusts, and monopolies that controlled the past few decades preceding this world war will mobilize their resources and fight to the death to prevent the extinction of their sources of income. They will not permit, if they can help it, the passing of the control of this illimitable power into the hands of the masses, to whom it rightly belongs. The selfish interest among the big stockholders, the banking firms, and the wealthy organized churches will oppose all change, except insofar as it will benefit them and bring more financial gain to their coffers. So much for this quote from the Tibetan. Nowadays, we do see this opposition still and perhaps even stronger going on. Tibetan continues, but it is not on the PowerPoint, so we can just stay here. But he continues saying, world decisions must therefore in the future be based upon a steady determination to further right human relations and to prevent selfish control, financial or ecclesiastical, by any group of men, anywhere in any country. These few suggestions which he gives will give much food for thought and real ground for happy, confident, forward thinking. He goes on to say, organize now for the goodwill work. Organize now for the goodwill work. The future of the world lies in the hands of the men and women of goodwill and in those who have unselfish purpose everywhere. This release of energy will eventually make money, as we know it, of no moment whatsoever. Money has proved itself, owing to man's limitations, a producer of evil and the sower of dissension and discontent in the world. This new released energy can prove itself a saving force for all mankind, releasing from poverty, ugliness, degradation, slavery, and despair. It will destroy the great monopolies, take the curse out of labor, and open the door into that golden age for which all men wait. It will level all the artificial layers of modern society and liberate men from the constant anxiety and grueling toil which have been responsible for so much disease and death. When these new and better conditions are established, then men will be free to live and move in beauty and to seek the lighted way. It was a long quote, but it says everything which I would really like to put forward in this webinar. I think I'm a bit over my time, so Martin will give some figures and data just after, but just before that, Sasha, could you just give the next slide? These are two uplifting books by a Dutch historian, Rutger Bregman. One is Utopia for Realists, and that's some kind of a Bible for anyone who is interested in the topic of universal income, which is part of our discussion of today. And the second one is Humankind, A Hopeful History. It's the Dutch original title would be Most People Are Basically Sound, or Most People Are Basically All Right. These are two books which are very inspiring, and they gave me much of thought, which I will share later on in the discussion. But now over to Martin for his part of this introduction.
Martin, just before, this is one of those moments where we've had a lot come in, and we just take 15 or 20 seconds. I know I started having questions and thoughts and correlations to what we were talking about during the Capricorn full moon. So this would be a really great time just to breathe in what Mintze has read and to connect to what's going on, what has been going on, what questions you have. Write anything down, or just stay in silence for about 23 seconds. And then Martin, yeah, this is a good time to ask yourself some questions. Okay.
Very well.
Yes, Martin.
Yes, thank you. It was a good pause. And well, thank you, Mintze, for sharing this space. And well, Sharon, everybody, for the group work that we're actually doing about sharing under this Aquarian full moon. And I think, yes, the Tibetan points out clearly the work ahead and what happened there in the times of the war and the turmoil, and there were so many changes happening. And I wonder what they believed in the 50s, in the 40s, of what how a situation would be now in the 21st century. As Mintze said, we do have some figures to show, only to put ourselves in context. And maybe if you can share the slides, I think it's the 6th. That's it. I am connecting from the global south. That is how it is called. Buenos Aires, part of Argentina, Latin America, and well, maybe the previous one first, where we have, I think this photo shows clearly the contrast, right? And what's happening with the wealth distribution and the principle of sharing. Cities where some people own a lot and others do not. And this is more clearly seen in the global south, of course. I mean, in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. It's seen everywhere, of course. And the migration problems are perhaps a reflection of that as well. In which, for example, only 10 people in the world own nowadays more money than 3.1 billion people. That is roughly almost half of the population. And we also have that For example, poverty is still huge, and we have like around 10% of the population, 9.5% still poor, and with that we have people living with less than $1.25 per day, like around $40 per month. And we also have around 10% of the population with actually having hunger problems. So even in that sense, more than 2 billion have eating problems, eating disorders of not having enough food, or maybe eating a balanced diet. And just to have also another quick figures, what is related to electricity is so important today, and to have energy to mobilize all that. We have around 1.2 billion people who are in problems having access to electricity. And in general, renewable energies are still far from providing the core of how we manage energy nowadays. So we do have a situation where actually the process of externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ, can it happen as the energies are distributed nowadays? Now, this is one of the questions that I make myself, right? And are we doing correctly nowadays? If we go to the next slide, probably, well, later, you will see this, you will see a map in which maybe it shows the work ahead, right? Because behind all these images are people, right? Are our co-workers in the plant. And we have people who are nowadays receiving less material energy in the form of money, and who are not being able to do their part, right, as souls. The problem, in my understanding, and maybe also looking forward to hearing what you say, having the material needs covered is part of the plan, right? Not having enough time to spare, I don't know, 1 hour per day, for example, which would be great, as the Tibetan says in the quote, no? Having enough time to pursue the search of the spirit. And what do we need for that? And if you follow what some of the figures that we mentioned, we talked about redistribution of the energy, right, of the global wealth. It's not only not having enough for everybody, it's also about sharing and about distribution. That's why I think reflecting a little bit on this and the Aquarian energies is so important, because perhaps if we deepened our work, our subjective work, and if we supported some current initiatives, all this could be improved. And we could see that everything that is there circulating, the material energy that is circulating, could flow in another way, and it could reach perhaps more people, and to allow the plan to manifest better. Because we cannot probably, we cannot say that the plan is complete unless everybody has the opportunity to manifest it. And as it is today, we are making progress. We had slavery, we had feudalism, we had, the Industrial Revolution, and people living in terrific conditions. But as it is today, there are still many people in humanity who cannot manifest their soul purpose. So we are still incomplete. That's maybe these are some reflections maybe to kick off and to share together. Whatever. Thank you.
So thank you, Martin, both of you, for this. It's a big picture, isn't it? There's a lot. One of the thoughts I had was that what is happening in the global south is reflected in a different way in the global north, and one of the things that the pandemic has done is really shown those gaps and abysses more clearly. Let's just take a moment again of quiet and silence and reflection and journal, write thoughts that you have or questions that you have. And then we'll take I think I'm just looking, take a few minutes between the two of you. And then would you just put a 1 in the chat if you'd like to go into some breakout rooms before the meditation? Just would you help us out with that, please? Put a 1 in the chat if you'd like to go into breakout rooms to talk about what we've just heard. Okay, thank you, Michael. All right, so, okay. So Michael, can you hang on and we'll go in after hang on to those thoughts. And would you please put your hand, Michael, maybe would you have a question right now or some comment that, and maybe we can bring in Mintze and Martin right now. Michael, you want to unmute? Good to see you, by the way. I love the ocean behind you.
Yes, a beautiful magic beach, a sacred beach. You know, we talk about sharing, and sometimes perhaps we get the concept of sharing and giving confused. And so perhaps Mintze or Martin can share their understanding of the difference between giving and sharing.
It's an interesting question. I think that the sharing is about a balance, and how do we obtain that balance? A part of it would include giving, but not only. Giving is more or less in a one-way direction. Giving automatically makes a difference between the one who gives and the one who receives. Whereas sharing is trying to get into harmony. Martin did mention some figures which to my mind are staggering. I mean, 10 people who have the same amount of wealth as 3.1 billion. I mean, that's totally the opposite of sharing. And if we want to make that harmony, in a harmony, well, I'm a physicist and a mathematician, and I think there's no other way around than the rich will have to give something to the poor. Otherwise, we will never get some. I don't say that we will all have the same amount of money, not at all. But if you are poor in the United States, you are still much, much richer than if you are poor in Africa. There's no comparison. So we live in a world where the disbalance, and I think that's what the Tibetan was talking about. By the way, and this is just not related directly to your question, but the energy he was talking about in the quote I gave was atomic energy or nuclear energy. And that's why it is a challenging thing, but I won't go into that. We can talk about it later, because your question was, what was the difference about sharing and giving? These are just my thoughts on that question.
One of the things, Michael, did that help?
That helped. I wanted to give a little information, perhaps. My wife has done much in going out on the streets and taking food and clothing to homeless. And when they're giving things, food, clothing to homeless, they've found that it's very important for the homeless to give something back. It's not going to be equal in value, but it builds up their own sense of worth, because they are receiving, they're then giving something back, whether it's praying for whomever is a form of giving from their standpoint. And so it becomes a two-way exchange, sharing. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I think, if I may, that's why cooperation, as many countries understanding nowadays, is not working very well, because they are giving and they are expecting to sign contracts, you know, to continue providing and selling things, etc., etc. The heart is not engaged, right? And I think that's maybe one of the keys. Because the masters, we're also asking them for help, and they are giving, you know, from the heart, and there is a constant flow, and there is unity behind. And I think it works better when we exchange, and always when this when the heart dimension is present, right?
Thank you very much.
Claire,
Might I say something too?
yes, please.
In the permaculture system, energy is balanced by giving or sharing any excess. You keep what you need, and then excess you must do something with it. If you don't, the energies are out of balance, and you end up with lots of problems. And this is, I know, mostly we think of it in terms of growing plants, but I think it fits the higher principles pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we finish this little piece here, again, this is, you know, what is true now. I'll just come into the chat for those who can't see if you're on phones. Claire says the circulation of gifts is a currency of exchange. And Belinda writes, St. Martin shared his cloak with a poor traveler by cutting it in half. He did not give him the whole thing. And finally from Claire, there's Lewis Hyde's book, The Gift, which I can also highly recommend. It's quite extraordinary. Before we go into meditation, the one thing that has just really stuck with me is and I know my sound is my sound improved? The thumbs up, that's better, yeah. I do a lot of music, and I have to sometimes play with the original sound. The thing that stuck out with me from the Tibetans piece was that the corporations, cartels, trusts, and so on will fight to the death to keep their stuff. And for me, that's really something that is very much what is true now. And I was reading Martin or Mintze, you can put in the sharing.org document into the chat. I was reading through that, and it really expands the whole question of what we'll be coming into later on. Are there any other questions or comments right now? You either raise your hand or pop in the chat. Thank you. All right, let's just take a 7-second breath in and breathe out. And one more breath in, breathing in and breathing out. And we've introduced this physical release that actually does something physical. If you put your hands to the top of your head and just let things release. It's a way to end and to let something go. And you can do it a couple times and you'll feel your whole body kind of tingly. Another breath. And, let me just test the flute. Sasha, give me a thumbs up if this is going to work. I might have to change. And if not, we'll just do a little bit of silence before the meditation. Okay, yeah, we've got the thumbs up, the sound's working. So this is a time to just be quiet, let things reflect. And when I'm finished, it'll just be 30 seconds or so. Mintze will take us into our meditation. And at that point, if you'd like to turn your screens off for the meditation, please feel free.
Meditation, letting in the light. We start with group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers, meditating between hierarchy and humanity. We say together, I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, and towards the Christ at the heart of the hierarchy. We extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. Hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. Meditation. Reflect on the seed thought using the keynote for Aquarius. Water of life am I, poured forth for thirsty men. Precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energy of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. Use the sixfold progression of divine love as the sequence of energy precipitation. Shambhala, hierarchy, the Christ, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, and physical centers of distribution. Lower interlude. Refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. And we sound together the affirmation: in the center of all love I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. Consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming world teacher, the Christ. And on the next slide, we come to the distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, I use the classical great invocation. Visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, and Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. The great invocation. From the point of light, within the mind of God. Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of man, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
Thank you, Mintze.
Thank you.
Good to see you all come back. Welcome back. So now we come to, we've got what is true now. We've got an idea of what is happening. And now we come to what's the next right thing. And as with all of our topics, the topic is vast. And if you read the sharing.org report that Mintze has shared in the chat, you will start to see the interlayers of complexity and how challenging this whole issue of sharing resources will be. And Mintze has a particular, and Martin as well, has a particular interest in a universal basic income as a starting point for sharing resources. So we're going to focus on that in this next section and let whatever other things come through. And we will check again about breaking into breakout rooms, because I think there's we have some questions and conversations. So I'll turn it over to the two of you. And again, if you have questions, please put them in chat or raise your hand using the reactions down the bottom right of your screen. And Martin and Mintze, over to you. Mintze, you'll need to unmute. You can...
Sorry for that. This is better. Okay, let me start, please. Sasha, can you put on the next slide, please? This is not typically about universal income, but it is related to. It's a bit a bridge between where we are and where we are going to. One of my favorite topics is the electric universe, and this is about Sapphire. I talked about the quote about the Tibetan was about atomic energy, and I'm a physicist, so I do know very well that the atomic energy as today is producing a lot of nuclear and radioactive waste. and we don't know what to do with that. It has a lifetime of thousands of years, so we really don't know what to do with it. However, in recent laboratory experiments, we have seen nuclear transmutation. What do we mean by that? In that case, we can transmute nuclear waste, radioactive nuclear waste, into non-radioactive material. This would give a huge solution for all of the nuclear and atomic energy problems. And once again, I'm a physicist, and physicists have a certain look at the atom. I think I don't know, I don't see the Babbitt picture, which I had on the slide. Yeah, there it is. That's the way how you will see in Cosmic Fire how an atom looks like. And this may be much closer to the truth than the pictures which you see in your physics books of high school, which are about some glass bulbs and with electrons running around, etc., etc. I won't go into the details, just saying, if this comes through, and I believe that it won't be before too long, that this process will be at the industrial level, then the prediction which I quoted from the Tibetan will come much closer to reality. The next slide, please, Sasha. The Tibetan was not the only one who was talking about a world of leisure and free time. John Maynard Keynes, one of the fathers of capitalism, predicted that we would all be working just 15 hours a week by 2030. That's in 8 years. That our prosperity would shoot through the roof, and we would exchange a sizable chunk of our wealth for leisure time. Now, what actually happened, this was in 1900 something. What actually happened, we are working more and more, even though the workforce, which was first basically composed of men, women came on the working place, but that didn't make us work less. Actually, we're working more and more. And even now, many people are working much more than they would like to. So, one thing we have to keep in mind is energy full of thought. I think this is one of the most basic things which we should keep in mind, because it's on this all the work of the new group of world servers is based. The same Keynes has said that the difficulty lies not in new ideas but in escaping from the old ones, and I think this is exactly what we are into. And we still think, and we are trained, and we are believed that work is necessary to give us status, to give us, well, what we are. However, Oscar Wilde already noted, work is the refuse of people who have nothing else or nothing better to do. And finally, and this is one of my favorite authors, Rutger Bergman, in his book Utopia for Realists, he wrote, a 15-hour work week, universal basic income, and a world without borders. I think here of John Lennon with his song Imagine. They're all crazy dreams, but for how much longer? So these are some thoughts which I would like to put forward before we go into another discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. The idea of less work. I think just before we go to Martin, I don't know if anyone else is in that, and some of us are retired, semi-retired. I'm still working, and we talk about I love work and I love the work I do. But I'm also finding that I'm celebrating that, because I'm also discovering or realizing or living now, making that switch to, okay, how do I really want to use this time? This point. Yeah. Martin.
Well, yes, I love the quotes in particular, and yeah, imagine, as you were saying, what will we do with so much time available? Probably you all have a lot of plans to do, and most of them we will probably watch more TV, etc. But overall, probably the time humanity allowed for spiritual matters and for elevating the spirit will be also present, right? And so I think a balance could be turned if we focus on that. And that's why if we look at the next slide, I think it's important to focus in the short term and in the long term solutions. You know, for example, we have recently this SDG. We have the SDGs and the ESG. I'm sorry for the similarities, but we have companies moving towards a deeper connection with purpose and with my environment, social impact and profit, and trying to focus more on that. And this is, as you know, this is being discussed in Davos and in other forums. So I think this is still strong, you know, in a way, capitalism, and perhaps it's not the solution in 100, 200 years, but I think it's gradually helping to move or to transition from the old into the new. And not for being known is less important the Sustainable Development Goals, which is probably the clearest expression of the plan that we have today as for humanity in the material terms, at least. We have several goals. You all know them well, and if we focus on that, we can make probably a much happier planet. And I think universal income is perhaps one solution to study, and what it would create for humanity as we allow probably the necessary to have a decent living, and then to decide if we want to focus more on several things or not, because we all know that, for example, several fields of service may include, well, the soul radiation, right? And we may be working and doing that from our heart and making a contribution. So but anyway, having like a level of income could help probably to better decide on that. Just as a synthesis, I think it's important to work having, I don't know, 100 years vision, perhaps, at least, or what we can see in our generation as servers, and trying to help to strengthen the key ideas, you know, working subjectively and empowering with our money, with our decisions, the changes that are taking place now, right? For example, buying local or moving towards renewable or other sources of energy, being aware of new ideas, you know, connecting the mental planes and having these exchanges among us where energy flows. So I think you also probably have a lot of, there have been some very good comments, and you also have your experience to share. So happy to know more from you.
Thank you, Martin. Mintze, can we dive in a little bit into universal basic income and
Yes.
that the solution again? Questions in the chat, or raise your hand, or comments. We'll just try to keep track of that, but we want this to be a group thing as well.
Well, there are many ideas about, many fixed ideas about basic income. It's probably very little known, but Richard Nixon in 1969, he did actually propose a basic income in the United States. It didn't make it through the Senate, but still it is remarkable that a president like Nixon did come up with a proposal for a basic income. He wanted an income for the poor. And in 2016, I told you in Switzerland we have a system where people can vote on any kind of topic. In 2016, there was a project for basic income here in Switzerland. It didn't make it, the vote didn't work. But a year ago, it was again on the roll to be voted, and again it didn't make it. Now you can say, okay, what's this all about? The point is that I think about 2 decades ago, if you would talk about the basic income, you would be seen like some kind of a lunatic or something not of this planet. Whereas nowadays, in almost all countries, the Netherlands, Canada, you name it, cities, communities are experimenting with basic income. So it is a concept which is known worldwide. It isn't a worldwide thing which we have realized, but as political figures are really interested in it and doing experiments, I think that's a very positive thing. I'm myself a scientist, as I already have mentioned. If you look at the data, because these experiments are not just, you know, we give them a bunch of money and then that's it. They are looking how are people reacting. Most people think that all the men will go to the bar and drink beers and just do nothing. But what actually happens is the opposite. People are giving education to their kids. They are investing in little jobs, in work, in making life better. So it's totally the opposite of the, you know, the stereotypes which you have. Oh, if you give people money, they are getting lazy and they don't do anything. The scientific data show the opposite, and that's actually why I think that the political people are getting interested in this topic of universal income.
Mintze, could you talk about some of the, actually, let's just do a quick little poll in the chat. Would you put a 1 in the chat or a yes in the chat if you think you can visualize universal basic income coming to your country, you know, and if you think that's a good idea, put a yes in the chat if you think a universal basic income is a good idea, just in principle. And the yays are having it. While that's coming in, I'll just say we had a bit of, I was speaking to Mintze earlier, we had a bit of that in Ontario in Canada, where a group of people who are on, who had been on welfare were given a basic income to work on, and allowed to live, gave them housing. It was entirely successful, and then we changed governments and that went away. And Christina says, and Saskatchewan, it has happened, yeah. And Christina said, I don't know. How many don't know yet?
Or how many would vote no?
How many think no, it would not be a good idea? All right. So Mintze, Martin, I'll give it to you for a few minutes to talk about strengths and challenges, because I as you know, there's a lot more than, a lot has to happen in order for that principle. I think it has to do with a lot of our thinking around money and where the money is going currently, you know, where we spend our money in society. So let's
Yes, well, I think one, you know, basic income isn't a topic which is totally dissociated from the rest of society. And one of the important points is education. Our education system of today is producing, or more or less fitting, young people into the marketplace, so they can be competitive, they can find a job and things like that. Whereas education should actually be about content, not fitting people into a given system, which is almost a monolithic system, because when I was young there were still two or three systems. In the 60s there was still a communist system, and we had a capitalist system, and we had some totalitarian systems. Nowadays almost all systems in the world are a capitalist system, so we should be careful about that thing. But anyway, apart from those political issues, I think it is very important that we are refocusing our education to let people learn at school what is life about, what I'm going to do with my life, what do I want to do for my society, for my community, instead of fitting them in a given system which is only about money and competition and standards. So that's just one thing related to universal income.
Yes, and I think that is happening, I think, with young people nowadays. They are, perhaps there is some instability. I don't know if you see it in your countries as well, but people, they may change jobs much more frequently than I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, where it was more common that people would retire, for example, in a company, etc. I hope and I tend to understand that this has to do with finding purpose in a job, in vocation, in the as DK understands vocation as a connection with the soul's purpose. Perhaps if we can, I think that is one of the topics that the third ray ashram or the seventh ray ashram, I don't know exactly, has been working with, trying to connect work with service and with the plant, what we do nowadays, and not just focusing or studying and meditating, working in the inner planes as other ray ashrams have been doing successfully. And well, probably these initiatives and trying to move the redistribute wealth has to do with that as well. I don't know. I just see that some some countries, there are so many rules, there is so much money kept not being used in a way, and that could be could help a lot of people to better manifest things. And at the same time, there is so much money that is being used, for example, in the military industry, and that could be redirected as well. So yes, I think it has to do a lot with still the work of education and working with ideas and strengthening has a lot to offer, right?
Vince, are you reading the chat?
Yes, yeah, I'm not very good in the chat, but I do read the chat.
Okay, so let me just pull out a couple of the ideas, because I think Michael, and this is probably the same for everybody, because not everybody's just gone yes or no, because it's this, such an, it's so connected to our ideas about work ethic and getting things for free and corrupting and taking advantage and abusing a system, because part of the thinking is if we just give people money, they're going to go off to the bars, and yes, some will. So Michael's comment was mixed thoughts on the concept if there's no change in politicians serving the elite, which probably opens up one of the larger questions. So can you address that, Mintze? And again, I would suggest reading the report. It's a lot in there. That really kind of opens up some of the questions there. Let's just take that question, and we'll go into some breakout rooms if you'd like. We'll check in. And so, Mintze, can you address Michael's concern?
Yes. I think the whole concept of basic income is independent of yes or no serving the political elite. It is a problem nowadays, and we are here in Geneva with the United Nations, which is actually, it's a layer on top of the governments, if you want. It's not a world government, don't take me wrong, but it's a place where governments can talk to each other. Instead of making war on the field, the United Nations is there to make that. And what is realized is that there is an increasing gap between what we call humanity, the people, and their governments, which nowadays are depicted as elites, which is a word. What does it really mean? But still, people are tolerating that this is happening. I mean, the discrepancy between the rich and the poor, we know who the rich are. It's Amazon, it's Google. But can you imagine your computer working without Google? Or do you really not order here and there a book or a package by Amazon? We do have the power to not do that. But will we? I think there are, I'm not the type to say, well, draw all your money from the bank and then the banks will get bankrupt. That's not the real solution. But in principle, we are tolerating that this is all happening. So why is that? I think that's the question. It's not the question of, those politicians, but it is a way of putting the problem outside of ourselves. I was struck, we had World Goodwill is organizing each year the World Goodwill seminar, and there was one seminar where there was a major of a Spanish town. She was the major, not a big town, and in Spain, without being specific, but there is a lot of corruption, and it was addressed in a discussion, and then some people in the community said, you know, I can understand that there is corruption because I would do the same thing. And basically it is that we can see that there is corruption in the elites and in the others, but in a way, if we are not clean ourselves, this is going to continue, and this is just a matter of gradation. It is a big problem to get the political the interest of people into politics, but at the same time, I think there are two movements if you look around. This is one of the things which Bregman is promoting in both of his books. It's very simple, and it is don't watch television. It is as simple as that. Why? Television is always focusing on the negative. It is made for that. It is, and of course you do need your news and things like that, but without realizing it, we are polarized or formatted by television. So just to keep that in mind, there's nothing wrong with it, but there are certain mechanisms in our society, and I think it is good to be aware of those mechanisms. And we also have powerful mechanisms. There I'm talking about the new group of world servers or people for the new age, whatever. We have meditation. In one of my quotes I was talking about energy full of thought, and I sincerely believe that through our meditations we can influence thought, human thought on a global level. So that is a totally different approach to some of these problems, because it's much more complex than to say, well, okay, it's those politicians or it is these elites and things like that. It's much more complex than that. I don't know if this helps to answer the question.
Do you have anything to add there? Or you okay?
Might I add something?
Please,
I don't seem to have a place to raise my hand, but I can unmute.
under reactions, you should be able to, but go ahead.
I think about excess and profits. While we're valuing how we value what we have in our profits is, I think, what we're talking about. And I know there's one movement here for trying to switch how people value what they contribute, and that excess that you can contribute could be with the right motives, be to a wonderful cause that's helpful. And if our whole society would value that rather than grasping and greeding and how much you have, I mean, that would be, I think, a big switch that would make a huge difference. How we get there, I don't know, but I know there's a movement, I think, called the Commons that says, how do you value what you have to offer? If we could make some sort of switch in that area, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning this. When I said don't watch television, actually what I wanted to say is there are so many local initiatives all around, and you don't see these on television. But there are. If you look around in your community, in your area, you will find them. And there are so many things on the grassroots level who are doing wonderful things. And I think if you take that all together, again, in thinking in terms of thought forms and of meditation, that will make a difference. So there are plenty of initiatives on the community level which do make a big difference, and which can contribute to eventually make a shift in that direction.
Sasha has his hand up. And this is coming on. I remember Sheldon and Helena at one of the conferences, scrolled a list of all of these organizations that were supporting New Group World Service, thousands and thousands and thousands. Sasha.
Just want to bring back that question that Michael asked at the beginning about the difference between giving and sharing. I think the current social, political, and economic situation makes universal income inevitable, with especially rising unemployment and instability that it brings. Governments will be forced to come to that understanding. The question is it just giving or it's sharing? And so I think that's what Mintze mentioned about the power of our meditation. I think what we should more focus is that it's not just giving, but sharing. So that it's like change in the value system, not just that the government will come with the next system of like pacifying the population, but that it would be a shift in perception in the entire system.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There is another book which comes to mind, and it is called Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein. And that is a book, plenty of ideas of this perception. And it is basically about the gift economy. It remains an economy, but it is not based on greed, but it's based on the opposite of gift. And I think this is something. Another thing which Sasha mentioned, and I totally agree with that, and this is supported by all the data about research on universal income. All the projects which have been done are profitable, so they don't cost money. I mean, if you look at basic universal income, always people say, oh, okay, how are we going to finance that? You cut out the amount of money which is given to a number of people. But what you do not take into account is how are these people taken care of now? They are probably searched by the police, they are in hospitals, they are in social work, they are in hospitals. We have a whole juridical system which is monitoring them, the police, etc., etc. And that has a huge amount of money. Lots of our control systems or management systems in society cost a lot of money, and they are about poor people. And all the scientific data show it is much more profitable. This is just mathematics. It's much more profitable to give this money if you want to share money with those poor people. So you don't need all these control mechanisms to keep things in a certain framework. And this is just science. This is not just not just some kind of thought. So that's what I agree totally with Sasha.
Mintze, Martin, in talking about what needs to change, and it comes up in that report very early on in the impediments to UBI. One of which being, and a large portion being, where is a lot of our money going now? Much of our money is going into military armaments. And I keep thinking of having been a teacher, I keep thinking of the bumper sticker that says, I look forward to the day when the military has to have a bake sale to raise the money they need, and schools have all the money that they need. So I'll leave that to you. And Estela, you also, Estela, do you have something, please?
Yes, thank you, Sharon. Nice to be here sharing with you all. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I remain thinking about sharing and giving, and also about changing, and also about politicians, because I always say that politicians comes from us. They are born and educated within us, but when they get some situation, everything changes. So the change has to be made inside us, in each of us, as Gandhi said. You have to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I think that is a point of balance, a balance inside us, a balance between giving and receiving, between the principles, the feminine and masculine as an example of both the original principles. So I think that is a big point to set the balance inside us, balance between receiving and giving, because it is the balance of the life, a balance between my inspiration and my exhalation, just breathing. So your topic about sharing and giving took me to this point, and also related with the key of Aquarius, the water, the eternal water, or the living water for the 30 men. And I thought I don't know if you know this phrase that we use in Spanish, Martin. The phrase is tanto va el cántaro a la fuente que al final se rompe. And in English, I try to say, so much goes the base to the fountain that at the end it is broken, it breaks. So, and we were talking a time ago about why the base is broken. Why the base is broken when the base is or become the fountain itself, when we unite with the fountain itself, with the origin. So, well, it's my sharing, my sharing. I think there is, when you talk about sharing and giving, I thought in a piece of cake. When I'm sharing, I cut the piece of cake and give one to you and the other one for me. And when I'm giving, I give many times what I don't need. I am the giver. But when we share, we put all we have in the same place and all can take from the same place. That is my vision of sharing, my graphic vision of sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Estella. That's gorgeous. I love that. it's like
a lot of things. Sorry.
No, it's like we put in North America, we put plates down in front of everybody, and in Asia, all of the food goes into the middle of the table. So, all right, Mintze and Martin, we're going to start wrapping up here. Can you bring us all home? And just as we're doing that, just would you raise your hand or a thumbs up if this has started some questions in you about how we move forward? Thumbs up, a one in the chat, something like that. There's been, yeah, it always leaves more questions. All right, Mintze and Martin, bring us home, please.
Bring us home. Well, I think it was just a pleasure to share some of these thoughts, all the questions in the chat. I know the basic income or a sharing economy is a topic which, if we go to our heart, we will probably all agree with. But we do have a heart and a mind, and sometimes our mind has a lot of questions which are answered if we go to our heart. So I would say, once we will get a society where the heart will dominate, then all of these questions will disappear. Thank you for that.
I would say exactly the same. I think intelligence will not save us. Solutions are out there, and there are many mental forms, many ideas which are being implemented, and we are struggling, as we have seen, still struggling with old ideas and trying to remake the energetic connections around the world, right? Etheric, mental, emotional connections, a lot of fear behind, etc. But at the center, we have the energy of the Christ, the energy of the hierarchy, and we have to align with that and just continue working subjectively and trying to support objectively wherever our hearts point, right? I think that is the easiest way maybe to speed up change. And I don't know, even for myself, trying not to desperate on how slowly things are going and trying to focus on the positive side and work from that point of balance, right? I think many of the contributions here have been very interesting. We have discussed a lot of things, and in the chat, many things have been also shared. And I would like also to recognize that and thank you for this group conversation.
Okay, wow. Thank you to both of you, and thank you everyone who contributed into the chat and who spoke out. This has been very rich, and I always leave with more questions and be more curious. And then with all of these, thank you, Mintze, for the meditation, and really for these, both of you, for your perspectives on this and bringing your experience to this. Estella, thank you. I know you need to leave. We'll be I'm going to turn it over to Sasha now. Any last questions? We didn't go into breakout rooms because it sounded like there was a lot of more happening in here, so I'm okay with that. Any other questions or comments that you feel to contribute to the group before we start to close up? You're such a chatty bunch. Okay, Sasha, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Mintze, Martin, and everyone. It's this special energy of Aquarius. We getting more and more experienced about what it means and what it brings to our groups, and we learn how to work with this energy, how to make it our fuel. And so today was just another meeting of that, where we working as a group in our space, holding our group chalice and trying together to learn by doing how we can become that working instrument through our meditation and do what we actually call to do, our group meditation. Today is the first day of the 5 days of the full moon. It's a high opportunity, and so every day is, every hour and every minute is very valuable, and all of us will be participating in many meetings with our local groups, with international groups online, and just with the ashram, that inner connection, that inner group that we all recognize and belong, and standing together as world group and recognizing that it's much wider than we as esotericists, esoteric workers of this group, and especially in this time, our work is important. And beautiful world, beautiful time. We invite you to join a couple more meetings, or a few more meetings that's organized by the 2025 initiative in this full moon. I will show my screen one more time. There are things happening this full moon and every day with the vigil happening at 9 p.m. together with the Global Silent Minutes. Please be part of this and learning by doing, experiment and group work. And tomorrow we have a creative lab, Souls of the Nations, awakening the souls of our nations, and we'll be sharing on the snapshot of Ukraine tomorrow. And on the first day of distribution, we invite you to join for the group meditation with the topic on the will to listen, a pathway to right relations. Thank you again, and a lot of work for us. So let us bring our candles, and as we recognize our experience in our sacred space, our group garden, our etheric agora, we connect in our hearts, in our group heart. And we invoke, may the power of the one life pour through the group of all true service. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Claire, do we have any beautiful music for the ending?
That I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow skies are that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Like lemon drops away above the chimney.